think, look, we're gonna have to switch it on to a part two. I think we keep talking about the two brothers, and we keep talking about OpenAI and Anthropic as is right to do right now. We've just gone through a segue talking about how OpenAI failed to meet its targets, right? You know, it failed to meet the 1 billion milestone in terms of weekly active users, and allegedly failed to meet its revenue target that was pinned and tied to that, you know, to that user number as well. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit, because on the one hand, we got this conversation about OpenAI struggling to meet expectations, and the same week a story drops that Anthropic hits 45 billion in ARR whilst at 30 billion the month before, and is growing at an 80x clip when it was expecting to grow at a 10x clip.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? How can that be happening right now with these two competitors?
Yeah, I think the current story with Anthropic is very interesting, because for like 2 years it just seemed like it was OpenAI that had the market, that had everything locked down, and Anthropic was just somehow behind. Like, it's interesting how they did it. Like, I can't even explain, like, how exactly did they manage to snatch the market like that, even if they didn't have the head start. I think it's very interesting. And there was an article that came out recently from, I think, Ramp AI Index, also saying that from their businesses, they've seen that, like, the last month actually, they noticed that they now have more Anthropic adoption for businesses than OpenAI for the first time. So we're just starting to see back-to-back things, like Anthropic is surpassing OpenAI's revenue. They have more businesses like getting adopted, and it just seems like they can't stop winning. Like, it just seems like they can't stop winning. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting. I've seen people say one of the reasons why this happened, well, two reasons. One of the two main reasons that this happened was because Anthropic decided to focus less on customers, really, on direct customers. Consumers, rather. And they figured that enterprise was the way to go, and focused on the coding parts of it. And the other reason I've seen as well is that people don't really feel OpenAI is a very, when I say ethical, or they're not very comfortable with some old man. And because Anthropic has positioned themselves as the safety AI, and the whole thing that happened with them denying to use the
we should cover that. That was interesting.
So basically the government said they wanted to use Anthropic's AI to spy and to be able to send commands to kill, obviously, drone swarms and things like that. And Anthropic said, nah, they weren't going to do it, and they pulled out. People, even though it wasn't, I mean, it was I think, $200 million deal. Really, it's not that, in the large scheme of things, it's not that much, but it just made people think, like, oh, this is a company that cares more about safety, it cares more about people. And obviously, Sam Altman has had his fights with Ellen, him saying, you're supposed to be a non-profit, you're not a non-profit, you're trying to do this. I think that has also shifted, like, people's sentiments as well. And I think that has been part of the reason why they've gotten so much adoption and just somehow overtaking OpenAI. And I know now OpenAI is trying to now focus very hard on enterprise as well. I'm saying they're doing so many things focused on enterprise. Yesterday, I mean, whenever this comes out, but I saw some old man said any business that switches to OpenAI right now is going to give them 2 months free. And I'm like, that sounds like a ridiculous freebie to give. 2 months free of unlimited AI usage.
Unlimited?
I mean, I guess it's, well, to be fair, in the tweet, he didn't really say how much.
It's going to be capped.
But it's probably, it has to be capped.
Run that man into the
But
ground.
yeah, but those kind of sudden, like, things thrown out there shows that they're starting to get worried.
Yeah.
Like, it shows they're starting to say, yeah, we need to do something now.
Yeah, I think some of the critical factors that you mentioned there are definitely having an impact. I think, for me, when I think around the correlation between the curves, so the enterprise adoption and the revenue curves, I think it's almost you know, that correlation and always causation and that kind of stuff. But I think it's fairly, you know, by natural deduction and logical deduction, I think we can see that the bet to focus on enterprise first and really command your spend and your go-to-market effort on enterprise worked. Of course, they got bigger budgets, but also I think probably an underappreciated point as well is they have bigger use cases. I'm still, and you know, people probably get angry, whatever, but I'm still yet to see a hyper compelling use case on the consumer side in AI. So consumer facing AI, like I use Gemini, Perplexity, GPT. I use the, you know, chat with them and they tell me cool stuff. I still haven't seen the monster use case in consumer AI, like a Codex or a Claude Code, where it really is just 10x in or 100x in productivity or outcome. I haven't seen it yet. It's coming, don't get me wrong, I know it's coming and I've got a few ideas in my mind of what they're going to be, but I haven't seen it yet. And so what that says to me is in terms of the phasing of their investment and effort in marketing and sales and product on enterprise, it worked. And they took the lead and that worked. I think the conversation around trust, I think that's fascinating. I think that's fascinating because that's a lot harder to quantify, right? It's hard for us to say 100% because they did that. And attributed to that. Was that the reason that, you know, they kept going at that clip? And for me, there was definitely a turning point around that Super Bowl ad. I keep having to come back to it. Did you see it?
That one was a good one. That one was a good one. That one was a good one. The fact that, yes, that's something else I didn't even mention. The fact that Somewhat Money obviously said they're probably going to do ads. And they said we're never doing ads. And they made all those very good commercials. If you've never seen them, go watch them. They made these very cool commercials and like basically depicted what it means for your AI to know everything you're doing. So yeah, I think that like you said, probably subconsciously affects how people view.
Ironically though, I think it will be looked back on as a mistake that they did that because almost every company that said they're never going to do that, even Netflix, right? even
eventually
Netflix,
you get there.
The holy grail of Netflix, they eventually did it. So I think they'll look back on that as a mistake eventually. But in terms of right now, the mind share, the trust, the perception, they're winning. I think OpenAI has had a few challenges on the trust and kind of, you know, security and perception of, you know, the prioritization of privacy. I think they've had a few challenges there. Whereas Anthropic, I think more from a brand than from what I can see in terms of actual products. But from that perspective, they have carved out a space as the trust and safety leader in AI, creating this, you know, allegiance and alliance of businesses, Palo Alto networks and CrowdStrike, and bringing them all together to be the trust and safety AI leader. And I think, again, I come back to David Sachs again. He says something interesting as well, where he was basically saying, by positioning themselves as almost a trust first libertarian AI company, it does two things. One is it helps them to get contracts over the line. It helps them to get, you know, customers and users. The other, which I'm not sure people are fully appreciating yet, is it acts as a shield versus how much money they're actually making. Because, and again, we'll come to the margin and the profitability as well, but if you actually zoom out and look at it kind of bird's eye view, we're talking about a company that's got to 45 billion in ARR relatively quickly. In a world that is so polarized and, you know, inequality is driving and growing so quickly, particularly in the West, you would assume that kind of company would be getting a lot of negative press, a lot of negative coverage because people are angry that effectively these multi-billionaires they're just adding billions to their net worth every day.
I didn't even see it from that angle.
Yeah, and so he was making the argument that optically they had to position themselves as on the side of, you know, the people, the trusted billionaires, which is a counter narrative right now. Right now, the narrative against billionaires is that you can't trust them and that they're only out for themselves. And so by carving that space, you know, media-wise, perception-wise, it really looks like a masterstroke.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because right now, like, yeah, it's everywhere. Like the conversation about inequality is everywhere. So the fact that just getting ahead of that, like now you can't really see them that way.
Yeah.
You can't really see them that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else? Anything else on Anthropic? Anything else you want to cover there? Anything that you read that was interesting?
Yeah, no, I just yeah, I think the other thing I saw was I think I already mentioned the ramp AI thing that they now get.
I mean, just to even just because that sparked a few thoughts for me as well. I think, again, for anyone that doesn't know, Ramp, they make the modern corporate credit card. So if you're a new startup or even you're a big, fast-growing company, but you're more forward-thinking, you don't want to use Amex, you want a little bit more flexibility. Basically, in the US and largely in the UK as well, you either use Ramp or you use Brex. They're the two competitors who go head-to-head. And they've started now to, publish really interesting data sets around on those corporate credit cards, which have pretty serious market share of the segments that they go after. What are they, or what are the categories of spend that are most common, and who's on the receiving end of those dollars and pounds as well. And so it is seen as where it can be quite hard to get real market share data that is trusted and credible. It is seen as a pretty good proxy as to this is the relatively good indicator of the data in terms of who is spending on what. So for them to come out and say that, and say, actually, by our metrics as well, it looks as though Anthropic has a higher share of business dollars as well. Yeah, it's a important and potentially pivotal moment.
Yeah.
As well.
That, funny enough, there's something interesting that I noticed more recently. Anthropic has actually started increasing their pricing for developers, and people are starting to wonder. I've seen a couple of developers like start to complain that like they've basically built their workflow around Claude Code and built their whole workflow around Anthropic, and Anthropic says that these certain things you do, you need to. This is the API like pricing. This is this, and I wonder if they're making the right decision, because it feels like right now when you're making a lot of, like, they're making a lot of revenue. Like, I wonder, I guess the problem is probably compute, which we're going to come to later on when we speak about SpaceX. Them having to literally go buy compute from somewhere else, because they didn't have any compute anymore. But they're starting to increase their pricing for developers. While right now it seems like OpenAI is doing the opposite. OpenAI is reducing the pricing. It's just an interesting thought. I wonder if that's the right decision to make right now when you're ahead.
Well, I think there's two. It's a good question as well. I think there's two things that leap out to me when you say that. I think one is, again, are we optimizing for are we prioritizing user growth, or are we starting to think about unit economics? And it appears to me, as it has been from early on,
it looks like
that Anthropic is probably starting to think, if we're actually going to go and do this thing and we're going to file and go public, then we need the numbers to look right. And more importantly, we need the trajectory of that gross margin to look right.
Yeah.
So I think they're probably starting to think, okay, what's the path to real, true net profitability?
Yeah.
Whereas I think OpenAI is taking a little bit more of a laissez-faire kind of. We'll get there when we get there. We'll get the users.
For now,
just pattern it and just. That's how I think about that one.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. All right, man. I think we covered OpenAI. We covered that battle versus